Benvenuto. I'm Jenna Charpentier, and this is
Maria Dutton, Passages, Travel, and Cruises, and thank you so much for joining us. Today, we're going to Venice. I can't tell you how excited I am. I've not been on a gondola ride, and now I get to go virtually, and you all can come with us. So thank you so much for joining us in Venice.
Besides the typical canal and gondola photograph, St. Mark's Square is perhaps the most recognizable face of Venice. While other public spaces throughout the city are referred to as campi, or fields, this space is simply known to locals as La Piazza or the Square. The social, political and religious center of the lagoon city is said to have been considered by Napoleon as the drawing room of Europe. Opposite the Doge's Palace, home to the ruler of Venice for nearly 1,000 years, the iconic library building extends from the Campanile to the quay, with its Ionic colonnade providing a refuge from the rain and sun. Where the square bends around the Campanile, St. Mark's Basilica dominates the corner. When it rains, the water is funneled into the drainage system and allowed to flow out into the lagoon under its own gravity. The pumpless system has a fatal flaw. When the lagoon floods during storms and the water level rises above the level of the square, the pressure works in reverse to flood the square. Venetians have learned to live with the Acqua Alta event, and just don their boots and carry on life as usual.
Oh, wow, we're high. I'm telling you, this is gorgeous. I just can't wait to go. All the gondolas are lined up here. I know you that know me find it hard that I'm not talking quite so much, but this is beautiful. Massive city.
I'm standing in front of a squero, which is a boatyard for the construction and maintenance of gondolas. Now, gondolas are one of the symbols of the city, but they began as extremely efficient means of transportation. They're very, very shallow and very narrow because many of the canals in Venice are very shallow and very narrow. And it was necessary to provide access to those canals and the people who lived on them. Also, the gondola is not straight. It's slightly curved because the gondolier rows from one side and the boat must be propelled forward. The gondolier places his or her, because there are now some female gondoliers, or in that almost sculptural object known as a forcular or oarlock, and that allows him or her to propel the boat forward. Now, the decoration of the gondola hasn't really changed very much at all. The basic shape we see was determined as early as the 13th century. And in the 16th century, the decision was by the Venetian government that there could be no decoration of the gondola. The gondolas all had to be black. However, foreigners were permitted to decorate their gondolas. It's human nature to want to pimp your ride. So the result was that the Venetian state knew where those wealthy and influential foreigners like ambassadors were. you simply followed the decorated gondolas. The only decoration that was permitted is that elegant stern, and on the prow, that comb-like structure, which really has 6 teeth. And those 6 teeth really constitute the symbols of the 6 sestieri of the city. Now, the last person to own a gondola and employ a private gondolier was Peggy Guggenheim, and she died in 1979. Motorboats, after all, are far more efficient than gondolas. However, Umberto is waiting for us. Let's get on the gondola and see Venice as it was meant to be seen. By water, by boat, by gondola.
Yes, let's.
We're approaching a small bridge, the Ponte dei Pugni, the Bridge of the Fists. It's called that because it was the site of the equivalent of the Venetian Fight Club. Between 1600 and 1705, groups of working class youth, the Nicolati and Castellani, would gather on this bridge and they would fight. The purpose was to try and push one another off the bridge into the cold water of the late fall and early winter canal. All of this was fine until in 1705, knives were taken out and roof tiles were thrown, resulting in too much danger for the population. So the Venetian government decided it was probably more prudent to stop it. So the last fight took place in 1705. We're approaching one of the most infamous bridges of Venice, the Ponte delle Tette, the Bridge of the Breasts. It takes its name from the fact that this was the red light district of the city. And the women who were applying their trade would gather on the bridge and expose themselves to the waste, not only to attract customers, but with the encouragement of the state, try to convert men of homosexual tendencies. Also, prostitution wasn't illegal in Venice. In fact, it was almost encouraged. There were more than 11,000 registered prostitutes, and the special tax they paid made a great contribution to the coffers of the Venetian Republic.
There has to be a story about Marco Polo.
Here, on one of the busiest canals of Venice, is traditionally the house of Marco Polo. In 1274, Marco Polo, then a teenager, was taken to the east by his uncle and father, and there he spent 24 years at the court of Kublai Khan. So he became such a loyal and trusted advisor, and so useful that the Khan didn't want to let him go. But eventually, he returned to Venice in 1295, and he returned a very rich man, having brought gems in order to finance his future business. He was so wealthy, he equipped a galley in the war against Genoa, and in 1298 was captured by the Genoese. He spent 2 years in a prison cell with Rustichello da Pisa, a teller of romantic tales. Rustichello wrote down these stories from Marco Polo in French, and eventually he published them as a book, The Travels of Marco Polo, or more popularly known as Il Milione, either A Million Lies or A Million Wonders, depending on whether you believe the stories. And it became one of the best sellers of the Middle Ages. We're approaching the beautiful Bridge of Sighs. The bridge links the Ducal Palace with its law courts on my left, together with the prisons on my right, the first purpose-built prisons in Europe. This lovely 17th century bridge was called the Bridge of Sighs by Lord Byron, who imagined that those who had just been condemned walking across that bridge and looking through those beautiful traceried windows and sighing at their last vision of freedom. The most famous of all of the prisoners who walked across that bridge was Giacomo Casanova in the 18th century. He also was the only prisoner ever to escape from the leads. Here we are back at the Square. I hope you've enjoyed our little tour through the canals of Venice, seeing the city as it's meant to be seen. It's now time to say farewell and sincere thanks to Umberto, our gondolier. Umberto will have to bring his gondola, which can last up to 70 years, into the Square for maintenance. Every 40 days, it has to be taken in to be resealed, and once a year, taken in for an entire month to be stripped down to the wood and completely repainted. But that month gives Umberto an opportunity to take a holiday himself, usually in the winter, because after all, we've had our vacation, and I think it's only fair that Umberto has his.
Thank you so much, Umberto.
I'm on Murano, an island 10 minutes by boat from Venice. From 1291, all of the glass-making factories had to move to this island. because the heat from the furnaces burned down the city so often. Also, the glassmaking was such an important part of the Venetian economy that glassmakers were given an enormous number of privileges. However, if they ever took their skills elsewhere, they were hunted down by the paid assassins of the Republic, and they were killed.
He makes it look so simple. What do you think it is? It looks to me like a horse or a reindeer. It's cooling already. Look how fast that cools. I was right. Look at that. How beautiful. Thank you so much for watching our videos, and we certainly hope that you enjoyed them. In order to show us that you did, we would love it if you would, I think there's a button somewhere, like, subscribe, follow,
share.
Share. Yes,
Share
for sure. And make sure that you reach out to Passages Travel and Cruises, www.passagestravel.com. We do everything but pack your bags. And share.
Share.